Why? Breaking limiting beliefs is a losing game. There are still people who will look you straight in the eyes and tell you that limiting beliefs need to be broken, identified, attacked, dismantled, defeated. This sounds heroic. It also happens to be nonsense. You cannot break a belief, not because you're weak, but because beliefs are not objects. They are not walls. They are not chains. They are not enemies hiding in your subconscious waiting to be punched. A belief is a position. It is a stabilized expectation, reinforced by repetition, emotional charge, and lived confirmation. It is an operating system, not a file. And attacking an operating system does not uninstall it. It crashes the system. Here is the part people miss. The moment you try to break a limiting belief, you give it attention. You give it emotional energy. You give it identity relevance. And attention is not neutral. In quantum physics, the observer does not simply watch reality. The observer participates in it. What you focus on stabilizes. What you resist emotionally persists. So when someone says, "I'm working on breaking my limiting beliefs," what they are usually doing is rehearsing them with passion. Dark humor moment. That's like saying, "I'm trying to get rid of this song stuck in my head," while humming it louder every time. Breathe. From an energy science perspective, beliefs are dominance patterns. They stay active not because they are true, but because they are currently the strongest signal in that channel. They win by default, not because they are correct, because nothing stronger has replaced them. This is why confrontation fails. Beliefs do not respond to logic. They respond to coherence, to emotional familiarity, to repeated confirmation. Trying to break a belief assumes that awareness alone dissolves structure. It doesn't. Awareness without redirection only sharpens the edges of what already exists. Hermetic wisdom understood this long before neuroscience tried to soften the language. Nature does not destroy forms. It replaces them. Energy never argues. It flows where resistance is lowest. So when people exhaust themselves working through limiting beliefs, journaling them, analyzing them, digging through childhood memories like archaeologists of suffering, what they are actually doing is staying on the same slide. Same perception, same interpretation, same identity reference point, just with better vocabulary. Breathe. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Limiting beliefs do not disappear when you fight them. They disappear when they are no longer needed. When another belief performs the same function, with greater emotional coherence, greater repetition, greater plausibility. Beliefs are not persuaded. They are outperformed. And the mechanism that allows that to happen is not willpower, not affirmations shouted into resistance, not breaking anything. It is positional shift, a slide change. When you move slides, you stop sourcing reality from the old belief. It still exists, but it no longer has jurisdiction, like a law that still exists in a country you no longer live in. In the next chapter, we'll look at why this override can feel instant, why life suddenly feels lighter, and why people describe it as everything just started flowing. Not because the world changed, but because the reference point did. That's where control actually lives. Overriding a belief can feel instant. There is something that confuses people when real change finally happens. It feels sudden. Years of work, months of thinking, endless attempts to fix yourself. And then one day, something shifts. Not gradually, not politely, instantly. This makes people suspicious. They say things like, "That was too easy," or "I must be bypassing something." No. You finally stop doing it the hard way. Beliefs do not dissolve on timelines. They dissolve at thresholds. From a quantum perspective, systems do not change smoothly. They jump. Electrons do not slide between energy levels. They snap into new states when conditions are met. Human consciousness works the same way. As long as a belief remains the most coherent explanation available to your system, it stays active. The moment another belief becomes more coherent, more emotionally believable, more usable in real time, the system switches. No drama required. Breathe. This is why override can feel instant. You didn't fix the old belief. You simply stopped referencing it. And reference is everything. Your mind is constantly asking one question, whether you realize it or not. From where do I interpret this? That where is the slide. The slide is not imagination. It is not visualization. It is a positional identity state, a stance, a frequency, a filter through which events acquire meaning. When you are on a limiting slide, the same event confirms restriction. Effort feels heavy. Opportunities look suspicious. Time stretches. When you shift slides, the same event confirms possibility. Effort feels clean. Opportunities feel obvious. Time compresses. Nothing external changed. Your interpretive origin did. Dark humor moment. People think they need to convince themselves they are worthy. Meanwhile, the system is just asking, is this explanation useful anymore? Beliefs are pragmatic. They don't care about truth. They care about function. This is where energy science becomes relevant. Energy follows coherence, not desire, not need, not affirmations whispered through clenched teeth. Coherence means the parts agree. Thoughts align with emotion. Emotion aligns with action. Action aligns with expectation. When those line up, the belief locks in. When they don't, friction appears. Override happens when a new belief creates less friction than the old one. The nervous system recognizes this immediately. That's why people say things like, "I don't know why, but this just feels right," or "I stopped forcing and things started moving." That is not mystical luck. That is a slide shift. Hermetic wisdom framed this in brutally simple language. As above, so below. As within, so without. When the inner position changes, the outer sequence follows. Not symbolically, mechanically. This is also why trying to believe harder fails. Force introduces incoherence. You cannot override a belief by yelling at yourself internally. The system does not respond to volume. It responds to alignment. When a new belief is emotionally familiar, when it feels plausible in the body, when it fits lived experience even slightly, the subconscious accepts it. And once accepted, the old belief does not fight back. It simply becomes irrelevant. In the next chapter, we're going to look at what happens when this process is interrupted, why people get stuck halfway, and how ignoring slide mechanics leads to chronic effort and identity fatigue. That's where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. We'll go there next. Why most people get stuck halfway. Here is the uncomfortable pattern. People do not fail to change because they lack information. They fail because they attempt to live on two slides at the same time. One foot in expansion, one foot in familiarity, and the system does not negotiate. From a consciousness perspective, ambiguity is expensive. It drains energy, it fragments attention, It creates internal drag. You feel this as exhaustion without effort, busyness without progress, motion without direction. That is not laziness. That is slide conflict. Breathe. Most people experience a glimpse of override, a moment where things feel lighter, where effort feels clean, where possibility feels close. Then something strange happens. They look back. They check the old belief. They test it. They ask, is this really gone? Dark humor moment. That question is like reopening a file you just closed and complaining it's still there. Of course it is. Beliefs do not disappear when you stop using them. They simply lose authority. But authority returns the moment you reference them again. This is where people sabotage themselves. They treat the old belief like a dangerous animal that must be monitored. They keep scanning for it, tracking it, measuring its presence. And attention, once again, feeds it. From a neural perspective, this makes perfect sense. Neural pathways strengthen through use, not agreement. Every time you check a belief, you fire the circuit. Every time you emotionally react to it, you reinforce it. So the belief survives, not because it is strong, but because it is still being consulted. Breathe. This is why halfway change feels worse than no change at all. You are no longer fully asleep on the old slide, but not yet stabilized on the new one. The identity feels unstable. The nervous system stays alert. Reality feels inconsistent. People mislabel this as fear of success or self-sabotage. It is neither. It is incomplete slide occupation. In physics, a system in between states is unstable. Energy leaks, noise increases. Human consciousness follows the same rule. Either a belief is the reference point, or it isn't. There is no shared custody. Hermetic wisdom addressed this without apology. No man can serve two masters, not morally, energetically. Direction splits power. Dark humor moment. People say they are working through resistance, when in reality they are negotiating with a belief that already lost the job. The problem is not the old belief fighting back. The problem is loyalty. Old beliefs survive on loyalty, not truth. They feel familiar. They once kept you safe. They helped you navigate earlier versions of reality. Letting go feels like betrayal. So people compromise. They say, I believe in expansion, but just in case. I'm stepping forward, but staying realistic. I trust the process, but I'm prepared for disappointment. That but is a leash, and the system feels it immediately. Breathe. Here is the mechanical truth. You do not stabilize a new slide by arguing with the old one. You stabilize it by behaving as if the old one is irrelevant. Not denied, not suppressed, not fought. Irrelevant. Like a language you no longer speak, the moment you stop translating reality through the old belief. Its influence decays naturally. No effort required. In the next chapter, we'll get very practical. What to do the moment an old belief resurfaces. How to respond without feeding it. And how to lock in slide stability without force. That is where real control shows up. We continue there. What to do when a limiting belief resurfaces. Here is the moment that determines everything. The old belief appears, not as a thought you invited, but as a reflex, a familiar sensation in the body, a tightening, a quiet narrative that says, here we go again. Most people panic here. They think the belief has returned, that the override failed, that they were fooling themselves. It hasn't returned. It was never gone. Beliefs do not vanish. They lose relevance, and relevance is restored only through engagement. Breathe. The mistake people make in this moment is responding content-wise. They argue with the belief. They counter it. They affirm against it. They try to feel positive. All of that keeps the belief in the conversation. Remember, beliefs are not removed through opposition. They are removed through non-reference. So the correct response is not intellectual. It is positional. When a limiting belief surfaces, the system is testing one thing. Is this still the slide we are sourcing from? That's it. No philosophy required. Here is the response protocol. First, do not follow the thought. Do not analyze it. Do not correct it. Do not judge yourself for it. Second, notice the position it implies. Every belief assumes a stance. A belief that says, "This won't work," is not information. It is a location. A slide where effort feels heavy, where outcomes feel delayed, where expansion feels unsafe. Third, shift reference, not content. Ask internally, very simply, from where am I interpreting this? That question alone interrupts the loop, because it relocates you. Dark humor moment. It's like realizing you've been yelling directions from the wrong side of the road. Breathe. Now comes the actual override. You do not replace the belief with a sentence. You replace it with a state, a bodily familiarity, a memory of coherence, a felt sense of when things flowed, even briefly, even imperfectly. The nervous system recognizes states faster than thoughts. From an energy perspective, this matters. Energy follows the dominant frequency, not the loudest idea. When you enter a coherent state, the old belief has nothing to attach to. It cannot compete, because it does not match the signal. This is why forcing affirmations fails. Words without state are noise, but state without words is instruction. Hermetic wisdom encoded this as principle. The inner posture determines the outer result, not intention. Posture. Breathe. Here's the part that surprises people. You do not need to feel good to override a belief. You only need to feel aligned. Alignment is quieter than excitement. It feels like reduced friction, cleaner effort, less internal commentary. The belief fades, not because it was defeated, but because it no longer fits the environment, like a winter coat in heat. If you do this consistently, without drama, without monitoring, without celebrating or fearing the belief, something stabilizes. The old belief still appears occasionally, but it no longer pulls. It has no gravity. In the final chapter, we'll compress everything. Why this process expands automatically once locked in. Why life starts feeling on your side. And why limitation dissolves without effort when jurisdiction shifts. That's where this stops being technique and becomes navigation. We finish there. What to do when a limiting belief resurfaces. Here is the moment that determines everything. The old belief appears, not as a thought you invited, but as a reflex, a familiar sensation in the body, a tightening, a quiet narrative that says, "Here we go again." Most people panic here. They think the belief has returned, that the override failed, that they were fooling themselves. It hasn't returned. It was never gone. Beliefs do not vanish. They lose relevance, and relevance is restored only through engagement. Breathe. The mistake people make in this moment is responding content-wise. They argue with the belief. They counter it. They affirm against it. They try to feel positive. All of that keeps the belief in the conversation. Remember, beliefs are not removed through opposition. They are removed through non-reference. So the correct response is not intellectual, it is positional. When a limiting belief surfaces, the system is testing one thing. Is this still the slide we are sourcing from? That's it. No philosophy required. Here is the response protocol. First, do not follow the thought. Do not analyze it. Do not correct it. Do not judge yourself for it. Second, notice the position it implies. Every belief assumes a stance. A belief that says, "This won't work," is not information. It is a location. A slide where effort feels heavy, where outcomes feel delayed, where expansion feels unsafe. Third, shift reference, not content. Ask internally, very simply, from where am I interpreting this? That question alone interrupts the loop, because it relocates you. Dark humor moment. It's like realizing you've been yelling directions from the wrong side of the road. Breathe. Now comes the actual override. You do not replace the belief with a sentence. You replace it with a state, a bodily familiarity, a memory of coherence, a felt sense of when things flowed, even briefly, even imperfectly. The nervous system recognizes states faster than thoughts. From an energy perspective, this matters. Energy follows the dominant frequency, not the loudest idea. When you enter a coherent state, the old belief has nothing to attach to. It cannot compete, because it does not match the signal. This is why forcing affirmations fails. Words without state are noise, but state without words is instruction. Hermetic wisdom encoded this as principle. The inner posture determines the outer result, not intention. Posture. Breathe. Here's the part that surprises people. You do not need to feel good to override a belief. You only need to feel aligned. Alignment is quieter than excitement. It feels like reduced friction, cleaner effort, less internal commentary. The belief fades, not because it was defeated, but because it no longer fits the environment, like a winter coat in heat. If you do this consistently, without drama, without monitoring, without celebrating or fearing the belief, something stabilizes. The old belief still appears occasionally, but it no longer pulls. It has no gravity. In the final chapter, we'll compress everything. Why this process expands automatically once locked in. Why life starts feeling on your side. And why limitation dissolves without effort when jurisdiction shifts. That's where this stops being technique and becomes navigation. We finish there.